Joining us is Patrick Minford, who is Professor of Applied Economics at Cardiff University and also the chair of the organisation Economists for Free Trade. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Patrick. Thank you for talking to us. Look, everybody's looking sort of at this week of trade negotiations between the UK and the EU in anticipation that there won't be a breakthrough and that the UK could leave with no trade deal with the EU by the end of this year. Would that be a good thing in your view?
I think it would be a good thing, yes, really, because we are going to be able then to get on with free trade agreements with other countries, including the United States, of course, which we're actively pursuing at the moment. And when we do that, that will mean that our trade with the EU will be governed by competition with other countries who at the moment are kept out of the UK market by the inherited protection we've had over the years from EU
Do you not think, though, that... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think that businesses are really going to be prepared for a cliff edge? Businesses and the largest part of our trade is done with the EU.
Of course, the largest part of our trade is done with the EU, but that's because we've been inside a customs union for 40 years, and that has given preference to EU suppliers. But once we leave, we will negotiate free trade with the rest of the world, and that will restore us to the situation status quo ante, where we were able to buy from the rest of the world and sell from the rest of the world much more freely than we are today. And that will mean that our relationship with the EU will be transformed, really, into one of competition with the rest of the world, instead of the present situation where they have a captive market.
But Patrick, what the situation we're in is one completely transformed by the virus pandemic. It's absolutely crippled our economy, the European economy, the global economy. What you're talking about is a process of getting to a stage of having trade agreements with the rest of the world. But that's going to take time, and everything is hobbled by what's happened this year. Surely it's better to postpone, to have an extension of the process until we're in a better financial state to deal with it.
Well, that introduces a new aspect, which is, of course, that, you know, if we extend the transition and we don't have this situation where we move to being outside, then we get involved in the EU's own trauma of dealing with the COVID situation, which, as you know, is causing enormous problems in a budgetary sense inside the EU. And if we extend, we get involved in all that, and we get on the hook for large transfers inside the EU, which at the moment, if we leave, we're protected from.
Well, so having said that, having been badly affected by the pandemic here, surely we would potentially, for the first time in many years, be net beneficiaries. It is feasible.
No, I don't think so at all, because of course, at the moment, we are able to deal with it through our own budgetary methods, and we're not limited in any way by the EU's rules. Though, of course, state aid rules have been an element of the situation, which has been quite awkward, but we've dealt with that, and we're able to deal with it perfectly well on our own. And we wouldn't be in line for any help from the EU. Whereas, on the other hand, if we stay in the EU, we are in line to help out in this crisis that they've caused by the fact that they're all in the Eurozone and they've created all these rules. And of course, there's great reluctance of certain countries to help the other countries. And that's a situation we really don't want to be involved in at all.
But Patrick, we're looking at possibilities of an extension. Now, the UK government said it won't happen. The EU hopes it will for these talks. But you've written, I think last month, you wrote it would cost the UK £380 billion if we did extend. How on earth did you come up with that figure?
Well, I'm just trying to give you a hint that, you know, we get involved in the EU's own internal problems to do with the crisis they're in over the COVID situation. And also, we deny ourselves the benefits of leaving, which are enormous. You know, I realize that most economists think we shouldn't leave, and therefore they approach it from a completely different angle. But we've done the calculations from the point of view that we gain enormously from moving back to free trade with the rest of the world and resuming regulations of our own economy according to our own interests, and which are hugely different from those of the EU, which takes a regulative approach that would not be our regulative approach. I mean, so these are gains that we make from leaving. And if we don't leave, we give up those gains. That's a very simple point, which we've made repeatedly, the gains of free trade and the gains of gaining our own regulative freedom. And these are completely neglected by the vast majority of economists who are, quite frankly, continuing in a Remainer mode.